everyone. Today on Stocks to Watch, we're exploring the rapidly expanding world of robotics and automation and how two companies are helping drive that transformation on a global scale. Joining us are Shahab Samimi, CEO of Humanoid Global Holdings Corp, listed on the Canadian Securities Exchange as ROBO. The OTC is RBOHF and the Frankfurt Exchange as 0XM1. And also Soren, CEO of HowToRobot. So Humanoid Global is an AI-focused holding company investing in emerging technologies that really shape the future of automation. And their recent strategic investment in HowToRobot is helping make robotics more accessible for businesses of all sizes. So very excited to have this conversation. Welcome, gentlemen, both of you.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thank you.
Yes, so we're going to dive right in here. Soren, I'd like to start with you and the big picture. So robotics and automation clearly offer productivity, efficiency gains, but would you say there are any less obvious or indirect benefits that businesses often overlook? And why do you think implementing robotics and automation has become so critical today?
Yeah, that's some big questions. I mean, from the top, I think the obvious ones is always, productivity. It's always, worker safety, efficiency, and all those kind of things. There is, I think maybe the funny response to that is I was talking to some people from the insurance industry, and they were very keen to know how can robotics help, on making jobs safer. In the other word, in other aspects, also the insurance lower. But then I think when they thought it through, would the robots also, invent suddenly new risks that we haven't thought of before? So I think there's always two sides of a coin there. I think why have we not gotten further than we have? Because I think there's still a long way to go before we really can call ourselves a nation or nations of robotics. I think it's a lot of things. I think it's a traditional way of thinking. Mm-hmm. I will definitely not say gray hair, but if I will, I'll point at myself. I think, just looking back at the last 5 years, COVID happened. People left their factories or, literally asked to leave the factories. And I think just after COVID or under COVID, people realized that, hey, if we automated, we could have avoided a lot of loss in production. All the cakes we were eating logged in could have been produced way faster, so we can eat more cakes. The funny thing was we saw an enormous interest after COVID, but we actually did not see that big of an adoption. 22 was a great robotics year, but then it kind of dropped again. 23, 24 has not been, great adoption years on the Western Hemisphere of robotics. So you're kind of wondering why not? Why didn't that just skyrocket into, and I think that's where the gray hair sometimes comes in, that we start like, oh, this is happening, but am I comfortable about this happening? And then we're back to, I get the point, but do I see the risk?
You bring up so many interesting points because, I was reading, first of all, I want to say the insurance companies and their question to you, will it make the workplace safer? Fascinating, right? I mean, that's obviously something that would be of concern. And I was reading an article this morning about AI and, hey, watch out, workforce, because AI is going to be taking over your job. And they had like a list, we've been seeing these come out periodically. So I think it's really interesting, and also that you bring up the COVID and the epidemic and what could have been had it been adopted earlier. And so I'm asking, I guess now in 2025, would you say potentially, because people are really starting to adopt AI in that, are we at a tipping point where it's, finally ready to scale, would you say? Before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos.
Well, I think more cars got added to the crash, if I can put it that way. I think, but I think it did. I think there is now also wars happening, and there is also political, changes happening that we might not or have foreseen. Um, at least maybe I didn't, right? So I think if you stack all these things up, I think we got a push in COVID and
Mhm.
a realization, but funny enough, maybe not enough. And then, at least in Europe with what happened in or is happening in Ukraine,
Yeah.
if you look at that, there's a whole production. I mean, in anything from agriculture to factories shutting down because of the war, which affects Europe and other places a lot. That's another push. More unrest in Israel and all that, which also added to the what's going on since. And we are starting to see UK and the actual, I know Brexit is an old thing, but we're starting to see the reaction now. People are realizing, no, you're not going to get seasonal workers coming in to pick your strawberries. So what are you going to do?
Mhm.
And then with the political changes in the US, for example, back to the strawberries.
Mhm.
You see what I mean? Now, we also lack seasonal workers now. And if you stack all of these things up, plus a few things about access to capital, what is AI going to do in itself? I think we're starting to get there. There's now so many cars in a crash that people are starting to like, okay, I get it now. Something's going to happen. So we are definitely seeing a pickup in these things. But I think it is what you said about, I'm old enough to remember when computers blew up and we all thought that we were going to lose our job, everyone. It didn't, right? But we changed the jobs. And I think AI as well as robotics is just going to do that.
Mhm.
I think most of the factories we meet are not trying to get rid of workers. Why? Because they don't have any. But they would hope that some of these workers could do other things. So some of the other things that they are doing that are kind of dangerous would be taken over by robots. They're not trying to get rid of workers.
Mhm. So, yes, and this leads me perfectly into the next question about your company, HowToRobot. So the marketplace and AI-driven platform here really helps companies overcome these challenges. And so maybe you could walk us through what that looks like for a typical customer.
Yeah, and starting backwards, I think I'll say what we kind of hoped was that if you just build a marketplace, buyer and seller will meet and magic happens.
Hmm.
Um, that I think for a lot of people would also be the case on dating platforms. But as we all know, that's not always the case. So when we launched originally, our hope was that we were at such a mature market that magic would happen. And I think what we learned was that that's not where we are. The buyers, hence the AI thing, are still not good enough to ask the right demands and ask the right questions and literally tell what they're looking for. And the sellers are also like trying to, aim at what the buyer's actually saying. So with those two things said, when we just launched a couple of years ago, it didn't really work. We had a lot of interest, but they never fell in love for
Hmm.
real.
Hmm.
So adding all the learnings that we now had, plus an AI driven engine that helps form the buyer's request to something that the sellers understand and actually help the sellers form what they're trying to say to the buyers. And instead of talking about robots and technology, literally talking about, are you able to pick strawberries and how many workers do you need to not have for, to be able to implement the solution, has suddenly moved our marketplace game to something that connects these two things instead of just having two people staring at each other across a pond. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect sense. It's, hey, keep it simple, right? I mean,
Yeah, we thought we did, but that's not where we are. That
it,
what we forgot that at robots is not where travel is, and we forget that we had travel agencies.
mm,
You see,
right.
they travel aid. I could go down and get travel to Greece or whatever, but there was a person there punching in things, and it took 20, 30 years for me to be able to go in and do this myself and understanding that I could, how to do this. So
And
working knowledge is what we're needing, and how the robot is trying to drive working knowledge about these things so that we get people to fall in
mhm.
love.
Right. Shahab, I'd like to bring you into the conversation, the vision behind this whole collaboration, how it helps make automation, would you say, more accessible to businesses?
Great question. I think with what Soren's doing at HowToRobot, really this partnership is removing friction for businesses of every size, to ensure that automation is no longer aspirational, but really more practical. We see it kind of like the Alibaba of kind of robotics, connecting businesses to businesses to marry them together on what is the use case or what needs do they need on the robotics and automation side of things. So I think leveraging HowToRobot's global network financing options kind of democratizes access to any sort of industrial transformation across many different verticals. So we have a shared vision there in making the world more productive, flexible, and innovative, with kind of the marketplace that they've built.
Yeah, you talk about sort of the cross pollination, the verticals. There's a lot of parallel work here. So, how would you say the importance would you stress to really build an ecosystem rather than focusing on isolated products or isolated companies or individual companies?
Yeah, I think with How to Robot, they have many different kind of nodes or verticals covered from connecting with investors to solution providers to a platform that provides commercial partnerships, and so really that competitive advantage comes from building a ecosystem ultimately, and it can become kind of like a super app or a very large marketplace like Amazon or Alibaba, where it has many different verticals. Ultimately, it's not just a marketplace connecting players, but it provides, capital solutions, and partnerships in that respect. So it really all helps to accelerate, commercialize, de-risk, and deliver benefits for all network participants, in that respect.
Yeah, the importance of the strategic partnerships. I have to imagine that is paramount to the success. So, Soren, I'll just ask you any final thoughts here?
No, and I totally appreciate what Shahab says, that our vision was to build something that made this whole transformation easier.
Mhm.
And kind of in the spirit of what we went through 30 years ago with IT, how can we kind of at least ease that, to what we know now? As you know, Humanoid Global is focusing obviously on humanoid and that whole development as well. I think it's one of the transitions we'll see, but it is not shaky, but it is a journey like everything else. And if you don't kind of help to accelerate, but also like you will humanize that journey in a sense, it's going to take forever. And I think at least that's definitely part of the partnership, that we can use our platform and knowledge that Shahab and his team brings in finding ways to lower the barriers for robotic adoption in any sense.
And I'm sure that everybody really appreciates that perspective because you're helping make it easier. You're making it more transparent as well. Like this is how we do this. And I really appreciate the way you explain everything, Soren. So thank you so much. And I'll just go back to Shahab. One final question, for those listening and watching, from an investor standpoint, what would you say makes Humanoid Global such an exciting opportunity right now? And how are you positioning for growth in the emerging ecosystem?
Yeah, so we're doing exactly what Soren is doing. We're democratizing access for a lot of investors to participate alongside Humanoid Global, in a very frontier technology that is rapidly growing and being adopted across many different verticals and industries. So we have an opportunity here to capitalize on the industrial, call it 4.0 revolution that's occurring, and this labor augmentation that is happening at this time. So we're kind of at the forefront of a blueprint for sector-wide growth and solutions that are addressing many pain points in automation and kind of procurement and financing and labor, and providing a lot more efficiencies for the future.
Yeah, two words I heard there critically important: solutions and efficiency. So thank you, gentlemen, both. Shahab Samimi, CEO of Humanoid Global, and Soren Peters, CEO of HowToRobot. For more information, visit humanoidglobal.ai and howtorobot.com. I'm Ashley Berry, and you're watching Stocks to Watch. Thanks again, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thanks.